When I first became a Christian, I attended some revivals. And if you've ever been to a revival, you know they can be like a big bombastic experience. And we had a revivalist speaker come in and did the whole every head bowed, every eye closed moment. And he said, nobody looking around. And he did his backwards count from 3, and on the count of 1 you guys are going to raise your hand if you want to follow Jesus. And there was this huge dramatic moment, and then this vast majority of people stood up in the room and they declared that they were going to be following Jesus and that they had become Christians, and it was this huge awesome thing that happened. I remember it was so early in my faith. It was one of those moments that you just never really forget. Well, a little bit of time went on, and a lot of the folks who made that claim in that huge, glorious moment of here we are, we're going to follow Jesus, don't follow Jesus anymore. And that stood out to me too. And as I, continued to mature and grow in my Christian faith and started to read the Bible more and understand more, one of the things that has really become striking to me is that the fundamentals of the faith are really very, very simple. What the Lord calls us to do is to be faithful. Yeah, and sometimes that means great, big, glorious moments where we really see the provision of God moving. But more than that, I think it means that we are called to be faithful in the little things, because it's that kind of faithfulness that you read about in the scriptures, about how people were dedicated to Jesus and dedicated to following God in every single aspect of their lives, about how Daniel, without fail, went up and prayed 3 times a day, never stopped, even when under the pain of death. Simple, glorious faithfulness. I think that's what God has called all of us to do, especially when I look at the scriptures and I see that's how his people and examples for us have lived there. We need to stop looking for these great, big, emotional experiences. And those are phenomenal when they happen, but that shouldn't be our fuel, our motivator. Our motivator should be simple things. Jesus ate with his disciples. Jesus took care of them. Jesus provided for them and for others' needs in a simple, day-to-day way. The Bible tells us that as parents, if you have children, that we are to teach our children the scriptures in their rising up and in their laying down. That's simple, small, but incredibly glorious work. We're taught to fear the Lord and to love him with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And that encompasses every aspect of life. And that means even the little small moments. Whenever we start thinking about this in the proper way, I think it's going to help us to break out of this revivalistic, only big religiosity moments, and help us instead to remember that Christianity is about the long game. We're not just trying to be a flash in the pan. We're trying to build a Christian culture and society that encompasses all of life and spreads. That takes time and commitment and dedication. There's this really interesting passage in the Old Testament where Israel is being instructed before they go in and inherit the land of Canaan. Moses gives them some instruction from the Lord about how to care for fruit trees. But it says, for the first 3 years of a fruit tree's life, after you've planted it, don't eat any of the fruit on it. And then in the 4th year, all the fruit on it is holy, give it to the priests, and then you can have some in the 5th year. And that's all it says. That's all it says. Because we're not an agricultural society, we read that and we're like, what the heck does that even mean? Why don't eat for the first 3 years? Whenever a plant is getting established, whether it's a fruit tree or like a young tomato or a young pepper plant or whatever, that it's good for the plant for you to pick off the blossoms, pick off the little fruits, because otherwise the plant will send all of its energy, all of its resources, all of its nutrients to that fruit instead of to the plant. And so in that tiny instruction that, the Lord provides to his people before they go in to inherit the land, what he's saying is, hey, if you want to be really fruitful, it's going to take time. And it's going to take patience. And it's going to take remembering that we're not just laboring for the right now. We're laboring for the generations to come. And metaphors like raising your children or going to work or building a career or laying down an inheritance for your grandchildren, which is what the Bible instructs us to do. We've got to remember that piece, that our faithfulness is is much more than just this big glorious, wow, look at what the Lord has done. Our faithfulness is more so calling us to pay attention to the day-to-day little things, because it's in those, I'm convinced, that the glory of God is truly revealed and that the kingdom of God is really, truly built.